I decided that we would go on to the next topic for the balance of our time today. So let's review the Everybody got this memorized yet? You should be able to say this in your sleep. I'm responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings I experience. I decide upon the goal I would achieve. That's what we were talking about before. And everything, underline everything, that seems to happen to me, I ask for and I receive as I have asked. So that'll be our focus for for the next hour. So the basic laws of the universe are simple. This is our good friend Albert Einstein, right? But because our senses are limited, we can't grasp them. There is a pattern in creation. Because our senses are limited, so our senses are limited, if you will, to the outside world. So our senses are limited to the things that we see and hear and smell and touch and taste and what we know. Now, science, just in the last, say, 150 years, more than 150 years or so ago, there was no knowledge of gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet rays, you keep running down the list. So the scientists have been able to discover, no, there's more out there than we know, than man could have seen prior to the invention of certain mechanical devices like radar and stuff like that, which tells us about this other dimension. So the same thing is true, of course, with sound, where there's a much bigger range of seeing and hearing, way beyond what we have. But it's not, and the dog smell, I think, is 40 times more powerful than the human. 40 times more powerful than a human. And it's just amazing to think what that would mean. Maybe there's some things you don't want to smell, but... And then, of course, dolphins and whales, I mean, they can hear in a range of sounds way beyond anything we have any knowledge of. But we're not simply talking about physical. Those are still talking about physical things. The Course is also talking about another dimension. So this is a dimension that doesn't have anything to do with our five senses. So it's about dimensions of the mind. So as I said during the first hour, for example, eternity has nothing to do with time. So if it has nothing, it has nothing to do with it. So if it has nothing to do with time, that means nothing. It's outside of the limits. Time is a limit. The body is a limit. Space is a limit. That's place that we step into, and then we think the limitation is that we're in, the dream, is reality. And the Course is simply saying, it's a lot more than that going on, right? So, Dharma, karma, the laws of the universe, is an ancient concept in Eastern philosophy, which describes the cosmic laws and order that make life in the universe possible. So cosmic laws, or universal laws, don't necessarily address anything that's physical. It may affect something that's physical, but it transcends that altogether. So the real question is, what is holding the whole universe together? Mind doesn't have form. Or why don't we call the rest of it God? The thing which is running the whole thing. So the thing which is running the whole show, it only has, there's this little outside piece to it, that we call space-time. So we're talking about something which transcends space and time, and that's what the Course is introducing us to too. So the ego, in that sense, as we said before, is sort of really limited to space-time. So if Dharma, the way, the path, the Tao, and karma is what we think, say, and do, to awaken, actions must be based on Dharma, or what the Course calls God's plan for salvation. So there's a plan for salvation. There's something running the show that has nothing to do with the mechanism of how it runs. And I think we all know that. I mean, we all know that there's something else that's going on, something more powerful that's going on. One of the ways that we see that is in terms of karma, for example. They know that's the law, kind of the what goes around comes around kind of a principle. As you give, so you receive. Well, that's not a physical law. You know, it has another dimension to it. So, this is our good friend Marilyn Monroe, who says, I believe that everything happens for a reason. People change so that you can learn to let go. Things go wrong so that you appreciate them when they're right. You believe lies so you eventually learn to trust no one but yourself. And sometimes good things fall apart so better things can fall together. Now, I thought it was interesting that I came across, look who else said this, the Dalai Lama. When everything is falling apart, something else is trying to be born, right? So there's a reason why things, it's sort of, you know, she predates the Dalai. You ever think the Dalai Lama stole that from Marilyn? No, I'm just. No, it's unlikely. But it makes sense that when things are falling apart, something else is trying to be born. And actually, what's going on right now in consciousness, even with this insanity that's around the coronavirus, you know, something is going on, something is falling apart so that something else can be born. And sometimes it has what would appear to be a tragic outside to it, right? But at the same time that's true, there's an internal cleansing thing that goes on. One of the things that you often hear is, why is this happening to me? That's one of the most common things. Why do we get sick? Why do we lose our money? It may well seem to be somebody else's fault. We seem not that we have called it upon ourselves. I was working with someone, of course I wouldn't say who and when or where or anything about that lost their job. And they lost their job because they were angry. And the anger came out, and there was a crash and burning and et cetera, but they think it's somebody else's fault. That it was the world that was doing this to them without recognizing their own responsibility and what had happened. If you gotta, it's like, and everything that happens to me, this is the hard part, I ask for. Oh my God, I don't want this lesson. You know, I don't want this lesson. Giselle told me during the break that she lost one of her cats or kittens this past year, and how difficult that's been. But that's also a learning. There's a learning of a letting go, that anybody who goes through the death of someone they love, we all go through these kind of things in our own aging process, right? Things do not remain constant. So you cannot distinguish, of course, says, between advance and retreat. And some of your greatest advances you have judged as failures. And some of your deepest retreats you have evaluated as success, right? I had an interesting little adventure last night. I used to own a restaurant, I've told you this, right? And it failed. And I just didn't have enough money to keep it running and to build it up in the first place, et cetera. And I went, the first well, I guess it's the second time I've been there since 30 years ago. It's hard to believe 30 years ago this happened, right? It's very successful. It was packed last night. I mean, it was, and despite the things people are not showing up, that place was full, right? And I looked around and well decorated and all. Well, there was a reason for that. One of them is that I wouldn't have met my wife if that hadn't happened, right? I could keep running down. There was a learning. It was a very expensive learning. You know, the School of Hard Knocks would be a better teacher if it didn't charge so much for tuition. I didn't create that line, somebody else did, but that's really true. Sometimes it looks like a really great cost that we have to pay for a thing. Let's say you go through a divorce. Right? Well, you go through this divorce and it's a really difficult thing, but you know, hopefully if you're smart, you'll learn what was your part in that. What's your part in that? Which then means that you can now have a greater awareness about how, in relationship, how I should proceed. I don't want to recreate that story again, right? So let's go on. So the Course says, without a clear-cut positive goal set at the outset, situation just seems to happen and makes no sense until it already happens. Then you look back and try to piece together what must have meant. That often happens in relationships, right? You just move into a relationship and then you wonder what the purpose of the relationship is. Couples will come together and then you get to the point where it's, well, do we get married or do we go a different way? I mean, which way are we going to go with this thing, right? We just kind of move into it, and there you are, and you're in it. Now what are you going to do with it? Or now do you need to do anything with it? Can I just let it be what it is? That's another very clear option that may be there. So the next one is, if you've been doing the Course for a while, you probably have this one memorized as well. This is very near. See, this is chapter 31, section 8. So there's only 31 chapters in the Course, and so we're getting very near the end of the Course. Trials are but lessons. You fail to learn, presented once again. So where you made a faulty choice before, you can now make a better one, and thus escape all pain that your previous choice before brought to you. In every difficulty, all distress, and each perplexity, Christ calls to you and says, my brother, choose once again. So often it's all about decision making. Right? But I keep choosing and practicing, and this is a school. We've said that repeatedly. So if this is a school, let me learn my lessons. Okay, I failed at this class. So I go back and I take the class over, right? So everyone's seeking to escape from the prison he has made. That's quite an interesting statement, isn't it? Think about that in terms of your own life. And the way to find release is not denied him. Being in him, he has found it. And then look at that. Sometimes it's fun making these graphics. You can do it. I made up the prison in which I see myself. Whoa, that's quite a statement, isn't it? I made up the prison. That takes a lot of maturity to be able to say, I made up the prison in which I see myself. I'm not, I will not evaluate as valueless. I think one of the most important principles in the Course in Miracles, lesson 31, I am not a victim of the world I see. You've really got to get, I'm not a victim of the world I see. Right? So as we said before, this is a reformatory mental hospital, it's a school. So many things are presented to us, like diseases and difficult relationships. Let's go on. I thought I'd share. So I like this line from the Course, says, learning is living here. That's what we're doing here. This is a school, so learning is living here, just 4 words. And by the way, that's where I went to school. That was my first, that was my school. That's my schoolhouse from grades 1 through 8.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
In Missouri?
In Missouri from 1949 to 1957. And that's me standing in front of it 30 years ago. The picture was taken 30 years ago. Now what's missing, what's not in the picture, is the pony barn out back where we kept our horses, because we rode horses to school.
Wow.
When the weather was nice. And in the outhouses, there were no indoor plumbing.
Oh my goodness.
Right? Those are missing.
That's
The student no longer needs to attend school once a desired curriculum is learned, except through their own choice. No choice is wrong. Now, that's a very important point. You can't help but make the right decision, even when it's the wrong decision. And that is true because the wrong decision will eventually lead you to the right decision. Because one of the things that you now know is don't go down that road. You know, that road goes nowhere. You know, or it doesn't go where I want to go, so now I take another path, or I choose a detour, or whatever it is. Sometimes people will get married and realize, well, I'm going to be really more cautious. If 50% of everybody gets married, gets divorced, it's 60% for people who get married a second time. It's 73% for people who get married a third time.
100%.
After that, most people quit. They just live in sin, right? No. I mean, they just live together and there's a whole section of the Course, which I'm not going to go into now, it'll be fun sometime, that doesn't say it's about marriage, but if you read it very carefully, it's talking about marriage, right? About binding ourselves in relationships. It's not just marriage, it could be any other kind of binding of relationship. Someday I'll find it and talk about it and bring it out. So every response you make is determined by what you think you are, and what you want to be is what you think you are. What you want to be then must determine every response you make. I had that before. What would you feel and think if death held no attraction for you? That's an interesting thought, because, and I think that's one of the things that's going on right now. There's such a fear of death. Like this means, death is knocking at the door? I don't think so, but certainly it's brought up that idea for an awful lot of people, right? Very simply, you would remember your father. The creator of life, the source of everything that lives, the father of the universe and the universe of universes. What is the universe of universes? It's worlds within worlds within worlds, right? I think I told you once, I was once contemplating that phrase, the universe of universes. And I'm standing at the kitchen sink at the time that I'm contemplating it, and there's a little bug, little round bug that's walking across the white seal that's up above the sink, kind of below the window. And I looked and I thought, that's a universe. That little round bug. It feels, it's got some sort of thinking mechanism. It's got little tentacles that are reaching out and touching things, and right? So it's a universe within a universe within universes within, all the germs, etc. If they're all trillions upon Google bytes, bits of stuff, right? So the creator of life, the source of everything that lives, the father of the universe, and everything that lies beyond them, would you remember? Because it's all one. That's a major emphasis in the Course. There is only one mind. And what the ego is, the ego is that part of us which thinks it's separate, which thinks it's possible to be broken off from the whole. You cannot be broken off from the whole. Even if you're living in a cabin in the woods in Maine and no contact with anybody, with no communication system or whatever it is, you're in relationship with nature, for one thing. Your relationship with all the animals that are around, you're in relationship. But more than that, you're in relationship with the Holy Spirit. You cannot run away from God. There's Harry Belafonte back in the 60s, I think it was, had a popular song. I rock right out to hide my face, I rock back. There's no hiding place. There's no hiding place down here. There's no hiding place. So if there's no hiding place, then I want my mind to be one with the mind, the universal mind. But the only way that my mind can be one with the mind is if I'm in peace. Because if I'm in guilt, then guilt is the thing which separates me. And guilt is the thing which breaks me off. If I'm in a secret place, in my mind, if I'm in a secret place, then I am lonely. Because I think the secret place is a real place, and it's not. That's why only by loving and by sharing and by giving do we connect with the greater universe and the greater mind, which is what makes it fun for us to connect with each other, however it is that we're doing it. We're connecting here today, but we're also online. It's amazing that every once in a while you think the whole world is right outside that camera, right? And we can connect. One of the advantages that we live in now that we can, I teach a class on Tuesday evening. If anybody's interested, go to our website and you can join the Tuesday evening class by just going to the website and finding out more about how to do that. We have people in Australia and Sweden and Ireland and down the street. Isn't that fun? So let's finish this. And as this memory rises in the mind, peace must still surmount a final obstacle, after which is salvation complete, and the Son of God entirely restored to sanity. For here your world does end. The world of the ego ends. The world of the self, the world of the individual broken off piece, and that has to end so that the whole can begin. People are so afraid of dying, but dying doesn't mean anything. It really opens the door to the possibility to the realization. First of all, there's one simple realization. You're not a body. You are not a body. You are not limited to this prison. You're not locked into this prison at all. And the mind is the thing which introduces you to the greater world. The mind is capable of creating reality or making illusion. I said before that you must learn to think with God. This is a very important point. That's why when you underline and put quotations around must, the only way you'll be happy, the Course is saying, is to realize there is just one mind. You are already a part of that mind. You cannot not be a part of that mind, except insofar as you think that you can be separate from that mind. Now, thinking that I can be separate from that mind is the thing which then begins to create the problem. that I think that, but that's also very lonely. And one of the things that I found, I keep going back to watching The Irishman last night, even though I only got halfway through, is because when you're killing another part of the sonship, that's a real separation. You're breaking it. Somehow you're making yourself, you're here, you have the power to do this. Well, you do have the power to do that, but you just created an immense amount of guilt. And you just broke yourself off from the whole, and and you're keeping this into yourself? I don't think so. That would be impossible to do that. The idea is divine abstraction, the Course says, takes joy in sharing. And the sharing is where the connection occurs, and it's where also the realization you are not alone. You cannot be alone, you can never be alone. And love is the way that we know that we are connected. Right? But if I want to hurt the whole, if I want to attack the whole, then that's ego. It has to be ego, and that's broken. It's broken off from the whole. It's not entirely, you cannot be completely broken, but you think you can. It looks like you can. And then that's the misery. So back to this. We're learning to think with God, literally. That's the only happiness, that's the only peace, and it's the only joy. You think that's a grandiose idea, but it's not a grandiose idea. You're just doing your little part in thinking with God. You're just doing what God would have you do. This engenders joy, not guilt, because it's natural. Course in Miracles says miracles are natural. When they don't occur, something has gone wrong. It's a natural thing. Love is a natural thing. It's the natural experience. That's what I should be experiencing. And guilt is a sure sign your thinking is unnatural. And again, as we said before, what causes the guilt? What causes the guilt is that I think I have actually done something against the whole. That's because you have. In some material, external way, you've attacked the whole. That's why you can't go around popping people in the head, because that's not your right to make that choice. You're not the decision maker when somebody else dies. That's a universal. That belongs to what is natural, not to what is unnatural. Right? It's unnatural for us to kill each other. So, there's a deeper responsibility you owe yourself, and one you must learn to remember all the time. The lesson seems hard at first, but you will learn to love it when you realize that it's true and is but a tribute to your power. You who have sought and found littlest, remember this. And I've done this one many times before. The power of decision is your one remaining freedom. As a prisoner in this world. There's the prisoner idea coming up again. And you decide to see it right. What you made of it is not its reality. For its reality is only what you give it. You cannot really give anything but love. That's a very important point. You cannot really give anything but love to anyone or anything, nor can you really receive anything but love from them, right? You can't receive hate. You can't receive the fear. I mean, it may be coming your way, but that's going to bounce off. I mean, or if you let it come in, then your ego is plugged into that too. You should be able to stand in the face of the most incredible kinds of insult, and it won't affect you, especially insofar it's not true. And a lot of martyrs have done that. When you if you study the history of the Christian church, prior to the Reformation, there were a lot of what we call pre-Reformation reformers, who were very often mystics, who were seeing things in a deeper way than the church was presenting it, and they were trying to say there should be reforms going on within the church, and so many of them prior to Martin Luther, like John Huss, for example, was from Prague. Had some great ideas, but guess what? He got burned at the stake, right? But he knew he was right, or the other people knew he was right. There's a church which still exists today based on his teaching. They're called the Hussites, and they live primarily still in Austria, right? They were seeing a whole other possibility, but the establishment wouldn't go along with that. But he stood up for what was right, and I would love to remember what it was. There's something he cried out in the flames as he was dying, Lord, open the eyes of the Pope, or something like that, I think it was, right? So every decision you make stems from what you think you are and represents the value you put into your life. Believe the little that can content you, and by limiting yourself, you will not be satisfied. For your function is not little. It's actually something magnificent. It's actually huge. Loving is huge. Being open to giving that love to the whole world, that's huge. And you'll feel good for it. And it's only by finding your function and fulfilling it that you can escape from littleness. That's what we're here for, studying this stuff. Looking at what this teaching was and teaching what this teaching is teaching, because this is where the truth is, right? And you know that as well, which is why you're sitting in this room at the moment and why you're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching it on YouTube, right? So this course is asking us to be big in love and our willingness to demonstrate love literally all the time. So all the time means that nothing pulls you off track. Remember again, don't let anything take the peace of God away from you. Nothing can take the peace of God away from you. So Jesus speaking at this point, if I intervene between your thoughts and their results, I would be tampering with a basic law of cause and effect. The most fundamental law there is. Now see, this law of cause and effect, this is not, it has a physical manifestation, like a billiard ball going across a pool table and hitting another billiard. One causes an effect, right? But it's also happening on the level of mind. That one thing causes another thing. I would hardly help you if I depreciated the power of your own thinking. This would be in direct opposition to the purpose of this course. The arrow means go to the next page. It is much more helpful to remind you that you do not guard your thoughts carefully enough. Now think about how we know that, right? I mean, we all know that we don't really guard and you catch yourself in mind wandering, or we catch ourselves in mindless activities. Television, for example. I mean, it's not that it's awful or bad or anything, but a lot of that is just avoidance. We could be doing something much more practical, right? So the power of decision is all that is yours. I emphasize that's it. What you can decide between is fixed, because there's no alternatives except truth or illusion. That's what we're looking at during the first hour. And there's no overlap between them because they are opposites, which cannot be reconciled and cannot both be true. You are guilty or guiltless, bound or free, happy or unhappy. It's your choice. That's what we started off with in the first hour today. All right? What makes ourselves guilty? The continuing decision to remain separated is the only possible reason for continuing guilt feelings. We said this before, but did not emphasize the destructive results of the decision. Any decision of the mind will affect both behavior and experience. What you want to expect, this is not delusional. What you want, you expect. I emphasis wrong there. This is not delusional. your mind does make your future, and it will turn it back to full creation at any minute if it accepts the atonement first. So, what the Course says that our function in heaven, it's interesting, so our function in heaven is creation. And what it means by creation, it means love. It means to be loving, right? So this is our, turn it back to full, so full creation is the only loving. All I am doing is being loving. There's nothing that's pulling me away from being loving all the time. That's what the Course says is our function in heaven. Well, if it's our function in heaven, and heaven is here, and heaven is now, there's no other place, there's no other time. That's a direct quote from the Course in Miracles, right? There is no other place, there is no other time. That's why this whole thing is a dream. You are dreaming that you are not in heaven. Heaven is not a place or a condition. It's merely, the Course says, it's merely awareness. It's awareness of perfect oneness. And that's all it is, right? Don't make the mistake of thinking it's a physical thing. And that's what, because we're physical beings, we tend to think it's a physical place. I think I told you about once before about reading an 18th century sermon where the minister was describing heaven as a place where there were very fine horses and carriages. Right. And well, that from the 18th century point of view, nice horses and carriages. Let's go on. Physician, healer, teacher, therapist, heal thyself. Many will come to you carrying the gift of healing if you so elect, including the people that come to you angry. They're carrying the gift of healing for you. And you stand a little bit of a chance, at least, of maybe extending healing to them if you know how to just be loving and just keep loving. Always keep loving. Don't stop the loving because that's the thing that's going to heal. And you do not respond in kind. Do not respond in anger. You respond in anger, it's just going to exacerbate the situation. It's not going to heal the situation. The Holy Spirit never refuses an invitation to enter and abide with you. He will give you endless opportunities. And sometimes you might say, enough opportunities. I don't need any more opportunities. To open the door to your salvation, for such is His function. He will also tell you exactly what your function is in every circumstance and at all times. So all you got to do is see it. I think we're going to stop here in a second. Let's do this one.
Can I go back to that next slide? Can I say something?
Back to back? Yeah, get a microphone.
What was it that I saw on that?
Mic on?
Yeah, that's it. That's
Okay.
the one. You know, we're talking about we're responsible for what we see and the feelings that we experience and decide upon the goal we would achieve and everything that seems to happen to us we have asked for. You know, it really is based on complete cause and effect. You know, what we ask for, we receive, you know, so that what we were looking at earlier is really based on the fundamental law of truth, which is cause and effect. But when I look at this here, you know, there's a line in that really stuck out to me. He will give you endless opportunities to open the door to your salvation, for such is His function. You know, if we look at every grievance or every loving act that comes to us, if we can look at them but as opportunities that are being given us by God to choose right, wow, that sets the whole a different motion in play. You know, like somebody's just attacking me, you know, in my mind say, thank you, Father, for this opportunity, because I'm choosing to see this as you would have me see it.
Right.
That's really beautiful. I love that I
Right.
just got that very clear.
Good.
Beautiful.
The only thing, of course, that many of us thinking is, do I have to be given so many opportunities? And do the opportunities have to be so clearly cut? I mean, does it have to be so severe? Why can't it be a gentler lesson than I'm learning here, right? John?
But what your earlier slide said, it's just a lesson I haven't learned yet being represented.
Right, once again, exactly. And sometimes you may think, well, I thought I'd learned this lesson. I thought I'd gone deep enough into this. Well, guess not, because here we is, this is a bigger test than the one that came before, but you had to have the first test in order to get to the next test. Right? You had to pass one to get to another one, right? Right. Just a couple more, and then we will stop. Let's skip.
John.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Sorry. We've sort of done this. Well, let me do it. There are always only two choices. Do you think the world needs peace as much as you do? Do you want to give it to the world as much as you want to receive it? For unless you do, you will not receive it. If you want to have it of me, you must give it. Healing does not come from anyone else. You must accept guidance from within. The guidance must be what you want, or it will be meaningless to you. That's a very important section, right? For unless you do, want it, you will not receive it. If you want to have it of me, you must give it. This is the cause and effect relationship. What goes around comes around, right? If you want peace, be peace. Yeah. Give peace. Exactly.
On giving to yourself.
Yeah, well, then you're giving it to yourself. Because you're able to maintain your equilibrium and your sense of peace even under disturbing circumstances. One of the things I think that's going on right now with the coronavirus thing is there's a lot of disquiet and a lot of not peace that's going on in folks' minds. So in the piece that I sent out this morning, I was saying, how are you feeling right now? Are you able to maintain your peace and your equilibrium while the world is going crazy? That's very important. You can. And hopefully a good Course in Miracles students will understand that they can. And you don't have to be a Course in Miracles student to understand this. Anybody could understand it. Why don't we close our eyes? And I'll read it and just see, practice a little bit. See if you can say it with me. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, for the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given, and accept but this into the mind which you created and which you love. Amen. So practice on memorizing that as well.
What's the question about?
It's page 350. It's the last paragraph in chapter 16. It faces, if you go to chapter 17, you'll be facing page. All right?
Say goodbye.
Bye. Nice having you all with us. It was great sharing.